In the last 72 hours, Ukrainian drone operators have destroyed more Russian armored vehicles than an entire battalion of tanks could eliminate in a week of conventional fighting. Not in a single dramatic strike. Not with a billion-dollar weapons system. With swarms. Coordinated, autonomous, relentless swarms of first-person view drones hunting Russian armor across the Zaporizhzhia steppe like nothing this war has ever seen before. The Russian tank crews never knew what hit them until it was already over. And by the time you finish watching this, you will understand exactly why this changes the entire calculus of armored warfare on the modern battlefield. Welcome to States News. If this is your first time here, subscribe and turn on notifications because we cover the strategic dimensions of this war that mainstream media consistently gets wrong. And what is happening right now with Ukrainian drone tactics is one of the most significant tactical evolutions of the entire conflict. Here's what I'm going to show you today. I'm going to walk you through exactly how Ukraine has transformed its drone program from individual FPV strikes into coordinated swarm operations capable of defeating Russian combined arms formations. We will cover the specific technology that makes this possible, the tactical doctrine Ukraine has developed through 3 years of brutal trial and error, and the strategic implications for Russian offensive operations across the entire front. We will also look at what Russia is doing to counter these swarms and why those countermeasures are failing faster than Moscow can deploy them. By the end of this video, you will understand why Ukrainian drone swarms represent not just a tactical innovation, but a genuine inflection point in how wars are fought. Let us start with context, because to understand why this matters, you need to understand what armored warfare looked like before drones changed everything. For most of the 20th century, the tank was the undisputed king of the land battlefield. From the blitzkrieg that shattered Allied lines in France to the armored charges across the Sinai Peninsula in 1973, massed armor represented the decisive instrument of ground combat. Tanks offered a combination of firepower, protection, and mobility that no other weapon system could match. Armies organized their doctrine around them. NATO planned to stop a Soviet armored thrust through the Fulda Gap with massed anti-tank missiles and attack helicopters. The Soviets planned to overwhelm NATO defenses through sheer armored mass, moving faster than defenders could react. Then came Ukraine. The Russian invasion that began in February 2022 brought with it an armored force that, on paper, should have been decisive. Russia committed thousands of T-72, T-80, and T-90 series tanks to the campaign. These were not ancient relics. The T-90M Proryev, Russia's most advanced production tank, carries a 125mm smoothbore cannon capable of penetrating most NATO armor at combat ranges, explosive reactive armor tiles across its hull and turret, and an active protection system designed specifically to defeat incoming missiles. On paper, the Russian armored force was formidable. On the Ukrainian battlefield, it became a graveyard on tracks. The early months revealed a truth that military theorists had suspected but never fully stress-tested. Modern precision anti-tank weapons had fundamentally shifted the balance between offense and defense in armored warfare. Ukrainian Javelin missiles, NLAW systems, and later German-supplied Panzerfaust III rounds proved devastatingly effective against Russian armor. But those systems had limitations. They required trained operators in relatively exposed positions. They had finite range, and they could not be everywhere at once. Enter the drone. Ukraine entered the war with a modest commercial drone program, primarily using Turkish-made Bayraktar TB2 medium-altitude surveillance and strike drones. The TB2 proved effective in the early weeks, catching Russian logistics columns in the open. But Russia quickly adapted, deploying electronic warfare systems and air defense assets that made TB2 operations increasingly costly. The TB2 did not win the war, but it taught Ukraine something invaluable. Drones could kill armor at scale, and they could do it at a fraction of the cost. What followed was 3 years of the most intensive drone warfare development in human history. By early 2025, Ukraine was producing first-person view drones domestically at a rate exceeding 150,000 units per month. Let that number sink in. 150,000. These are not sophisticated platforms requiring rare components or specialized manufacturing. They are purpose-built weapons assembled in converted factories, workshops, and in some cases garages across western Ukraine, beyond the reach of Russian missile strikes. Each drone costs between $400 and $800 to produce. Each Russian tank it destroys costs Moscow between $2 and $4 million to replace, assuming replacement parts are even available given Western sanctions on Russian defense imports. The economics of this war have always favored Ukraine in the drone domain. But economics alone do not win battles. Tactics do. Now let us get into exactly what changed, because the shift from individual FPV strikes to coordinated swarm operations represents something genuinely new. Something that Russian commanders, despite 3 years of painful experience, have struggled to counter effectively. The individual FPV drone strike became familiar to anyone following this conflict. A Ukrainian operator, using first-person view goggles that give them a pilot's eye view of the drone's camera feed, guides a small, explosive-carrying drone directly into a Russian vehicle. The strikes are precise, often devastating, and extensively documented on social media. Thousands of such strikes have been recorded and published. They have destroyed an estimated 6,700 Russian armored vehicles since the start of the invasion, according to Oryx, the open-source military equipment tracking project that independently verifies losses through photographic evidence. But individual strikes, however effective, have a fundamental limitation. A single drone operator can engage one target at a time. A tank crew that spots an incoming FPV drone has a chance, however slim, to react. They can accelerate, change direction, or deploy smoke. The Russian military has also developed what they call cope cages, improvised metal grill structures mounted over tank turrets designed to prematurely detonate drone warheads before they reach critical components. These solutions are crude and only partially effective, but they represent adaptation. Ukrainian drone operators and military engineers studied this adaptation problem and developed an answer. The answer is coordination. A Ukrainian drone swarm, as currently deployed, does not mean dozens of drones launched chaotically in the same direction. It means a precisely coordinated multi-element attack in which different drones perform different functions simultaneously, overwhelming the target's ability to respond to any single threat. Here is how a modern Ukrainian swarm attack unfolds in practice. The first element consists of surveillance drones. Typically, these are modified commercial quadcopters, often DJI Mavic 3 series or Ukrainian-produced equivalents, flying at altitude and feeding real-time intelligence to a ground control station. These surveillance assets identify the target, track its movement, assess its defensive posture, and identify which crew members or associated infantry are in position to interfere with the strike. This surveillance layer operates continuously, not just during the attack itself, giving Ukrainian operators a persistent picture of the target area. The second element is the jamming drone. Ukraine has developed electronic warfare drones that can suppress Russian crew communication frequencies and, critically, attempt to degrade Russian electronic warfare systems that might otherwise interfere with the strike drone's control signals. This is a chess match within a chess match. Russian forces deploy sophisticated EW systems, including the R330ZH Zytel, a vehicle-mounted communications jamming complex, specifically to break the link between Ukrainian operators and their drones. Ukrainian engineers have responded with frequency-hopping control protocols, fiber-optic guided drones that cannot be jammed at all because they communicate through a physical cable, and redundant control systems that switch frequencies automatically when jamming is detected. The third element is the strike package itself. Multiple FPV drones, typically between 3 and 6 in a coordinated attack, approach the target from different vectors simultaneously. This multi-axis approach is the tactical key. A tank crew commander cannot simultaneously watch 6 different approach angles. Russian air defense systems designed to engage aircraft or missiles are not optimized to track and engage multiple small, low-flying, fast-maneuvering drones attacking from different directions at the same moment. The fourth element, and this is where the tactical sophistication reaches its peak, is the secondary strike drone. Its purpose is not to destroy the tank. Its purpose is to destroy whatever equipment the crew uses to protect against drone attacks. Russian tank crews have increasingly been equipped with drone detection systems, portable jammers, and in some cases, RPG teams positioned nearby specifically to shoot down incoming FPV drones. The secondary strike drone targets these countermeasures first, neutralizing the defenses before the primary strike package arrives. The result is a kill chain so compressed that Russian tank crews have described in intercepted communications as feeling like they are being hunted. Because they are. Ukrainian military intelligence reports, cited by defense analyst Rob Lee of the Foreign Policy Research Institute, indicate that Russian armored vehicle losses to drone strikes increased by approximately 340% between the first quarter of 2024 and the first quarter of 2025. This is not a marginal improvement in an existing capability. This is a qualitative leap in lethality. Now let us talk about what this means strategically, because the tactical picture is only the beginning of the story. Russia's operational strategy for 2024 and into 2025 has centered on what military analysts call attritional pressure. The theory, as expressed by Russian military bloggers with apparent access to general staff thinking, is straightforward. Apply continuous pressure across multiple sectors of the front, force Ukraine to spend its limited manpower and ammunition defending everywhere, and wait for Western political will to fracture. Find the weakest point in Ukrainian lines through constant probing attacks. Then concentrate armor and infantry to achieve local breakthroughs that can be exploited before Ukrainian reserves can respond. This strategy requires armor. It requires the ability to mass tanks and infantry fighting vehicles at the point of decision, push them forward through Ukrainian defensive lines, and exploit the resulting gap faster than defenders can close it. Armor is the instrument of exploitation. Without it, you can achieve local tactical successes, but cannot convert them into operational level advances. Ukrainian drone swarms are systematically destroying Russia's ability to mass armor. Consider what this means in practical terms. A Russian brigade commander planning an assault operation must now assume that any concentration of armor within Ukrainian drone range, which extends to approximately 15 to 20 kilometers behind the forward edge of battle with current systems, will be identified by Ukrainian surveillance drones within hours of assembly. Once identified, a swarm attack can be coordinated and executed within 30 to 45 minutes. The tanks that were supposed to lead tomorrow's assault are burning tonight. This creates what military planners call a tactical dilemma. To mass armor for an assault, Russia accepts massive vulnerability during the assembly phase. To avoid vulnerability during assembly, Russia disperses its armor, which means it cannot mass the combat power necessary to achieve a breakthrough. Either choice degrades Russian offensive capability. Either choice gives Ukraine time and space that its defenders desperately need. The economic dimension compounds the tactical pressure. Russia's tank production capacity, according to analysis by the Kyiv-based Center for Defense Strategies and corroborated by Western intelligence assessments reported in the Wall Street Journal in December 2024, runs at approximately 1,500 new and refurbished tanks per year. This sounds substantial until you compare it to confirmed losses. Oryx's verified count of destroyed Russian tanks exceeded 3,200 as of early 2025, and verified losses are always a fraction of actual losses because not every destroyed vehicle is photographed and confirmed. Estimates from the International Institute for Strategic Studies suggest actual Russian armored vehicle losses could be 40 to 60% higher than verified counts. Russia is consuming its armored reserve faster than it can replace it. Ukrainian drone swarms are accelerating that consumption rate. Now, it would be wrong to present this as a one-sided equation. Russia is not standing still. The countermeasures Russia has developed and deployed deserve serious analysis because understanding them reveals both the limitations of Ukrainian drone swarms and the reason those limitations have not been strategically decisive. Russia's primary electronic warfare response has been the deployment of what military analysts call drone jamming bubbles around high-value armored assets. Systems like the Repellent 1 stationary anti-drone complex and the vehicle-mounted Alabuga EW system create a zone of radio frequency interference that can sever the control link between Ukrainian operators and their drones. Within this bubble, which typically extends 3 to 5 kilometers from the jamming source, radio-controlled FPV drones lose their control signal and, if they lack autonomous guidance, crash harmlessly. This is a genuine capability. It has saved Russian tanks. But it has two critical vulnerabilities that Ukrainian engineers have exploited. First, the jamming bubble does not move quickly. Armored vehicles equipped with jamming systems are heavy, slow, and conspicuous. They emit distinctive electronic signatures that Ukrainian signals intelligence can detect and target. Ukrainian strike drones have increasingly been used not to attack tanks, but to destroy the EW vehicles protecting them, stripping away the electronic umbrella before the main strike package arrives. Second, and more fundamentally, Ukraine has accelerated development of fiber optic guided drones that cannot be jammed by any radio frequency interference because they do not use radio communication at all. A fiber optic guided drone trails a hair-thin optical cable behind it as it flies, transmitting video and receiving control signals through light pulses in the fiber rather than radio waves. No radio signal, nothing to jam. Ukrainian domestic producers, including Ukrspecs Systems, have confirmed serial production of fiber optic FPV drones, with military sources cited by Ukrainian defense publication Defense Express, indicating monthly production in the thousands as of late 2024. Russia has no effective counter to fiber optic guided drones within current deployed systems. The electronic warfare advantage that Russian forces have invested heavily in building is being systematically circumvented by a technology that costs only marginally more than the radio-controlled drones it replaces. The second Russian countermeasure is kinetic. Russian forces have deployed dedicated anti-drone infantry teams, typically equipped with shotguns loaded with specialized birdshot or purpose-built anti-drone rifle systems, positioned around armored formations specifically to engage incoming FPV drones. This approach has had some documented success, particularly against the slower surveillance drones that coordinate swarm attacks. Shooting a fast-moving FPV drone with a shotgun requires skill and advance warning, but it is not impossible. The Ukrainian answer to this countermeasure returns us to the swarm concept itself. The anti-drone infantry team is itself now a target. Ukrainian surveillance drones identify the positions of these teams. Strike drones are then directed against the teams before or simultaneously with attacks on the armored vehicles they are protecting. The defenders have become targets of their own defense. This is the fundamental challenge Russia faces. Every countermeasure Ukraine identifies generates a countermeasure. Every adaptation Russia makes is studied and answered. 3 years of intensive combat have given Ukraine's drone operators and engineers a depth of practical experience that no training exercise or simulation can replicate. They have learned through trial and error, through lost drones and failed attacks, through studying every piece of Russian EW equipment they have captured or destroyed. The learning curve has been brutal, and Ukraine has climbed it faster than Russia. Looking forward, several developments will determine how this technological competition resolves over the coming months. The integration of artificial intelligence into drone swarm coordination represents the next threshold. Currently, Ukrainian swarm attacks require human operators coordinating multiple drone feeds simultaneously, a cognitively demanding task that limits the scale of coordinated operations. AI-assisted targeting and coordination could multiply the effectiveness of a single operator, potentially allowing one person to manage a swarm of 20 or 30 drones, rather than 3 to 6. Ukrainian technology companies, including Swarmer, a Kyiv-based drone software startup that has received Ukrainian government contracts, are reportedly developing AI coordination software specifically for military drone applications. If deployed at scale, this capability would represent another qualitative leap in swarm lethality. The range question also matters enormously. Current FPV drones operate effectively to ranges of 5 to 10 kilometers from the operator's position. Extending that range would allow Ukrainian operators to strike Russian assembly areas and logistics nodes further behind the front, compressing Russia's operational depth and making the strategic rear as dangerous as the tactical front. Ukrainian engineers have demonstrated prototype long-range FPV systems with ranges exceeding 20 kilometers in controlled testing. Operational deployment of such systems would fundamentally change what targets are at risk. Russia understands these trajectories. The desperation visible in Russian operational patterns since mid-2024, the willingness to accept staggering infantry losses in human wave assaults rather than leading with armor, reflects a military command that has calculated that its armored forces cannot survive extended exposure to Ukrainian drone swarms. The shift to infantry-heavy tactics is not doctrine. It is an adaptation forced by Ukrainian drone superiority in the armored warfare domain. That is not a minor tactical adjustment. That is a fundamental change in how Russia fights, imposed on Moscow by Ukrainian innovation. The lesson for military establishments worldwide is already being absorbed. The United States Army's Project Convergence program, the British Army's drone integration initiatives, and China's extensive investment in drone swarm research all reflect the understanding that what Ukraine has demonstrated is not a local phenomenon specific to this conflict. It is a preview of how future wars will be fought. For now, the most immediate consequence is measured in burning Russian tanks on the Zaporizhzhia steppe, in intercepted communications from Russian crews who have stopped volunteering for armored operations, and in Russian offensive plans that cannot be executed because the armor required to execute them keeps getting destroyed before it reaches the line of departure. Ukraine's drone swarms are not winning this war alone. No single capability wins a modern war alone. But they are denying Russia the one instrument it most needs to force a decisive outcome: massed armor breaking through Ukrainian lines and exploiting into the operational depth beyond. As long as that armor keeps burning, the strategic initiative remains contested. And as long as Ukrainian engineers keep innovating faster than Russian countermeasures can adapt, the swarms will keep hunting. Watch this space. The next evolution is already in development, and it will matter even more than what we have seen so far. If you want analysis of that development when it emerges, this channel will cover it with the depth it deserves. Subscribe and you will not miss it.